just to give people a backdrop, you wrote an article which you're going to go through now, against some of the what you believe are the errors that Whitney Webb made. Whitney Webb has replied, so people understand the reply while as you're going through it. I think that's a fair thing to say, fair thing to do. And I've on the tweet, I've actually invited her onto the space, and I've actually wrote, "Hi Whitney Webb, are you willing to come my space and discuss this with Michael Tracy? Also, Ryan Liberty is willing to debate you on the claim of plagiarism. Are you willing to come on my space and debate this? I hold the biggest space on X. This is an opportunity for you to give your perspective to an audience that supports the both of you." So I mean, look, we are the biggest space on X. We are Glenn Greenwald. I know you really well. I know you know him really well. You're a regular on his show. I think we were like 5,000 people yesterday during the Israel-Iran war. We had 20,000 people live. So we get huge numbers. So anyway, this is your, you wrote the article. I'm going to let you explain the article, but I want people to be cognizant of her reply because I think that's a fair thing for both of you. So she said this, you know,
I
"Hi,
posted
Michael."
a reply in the article, so there's no. I proactively put everything out there.
Sorry, what was that? Her reply wasn't to the article.
No, it was in the article. I quoted from her reply at the very top of my article, and then also posted the full email at the end. So it's not as though she's saying anything new.
Okay, so I'll read this tweet.
Reposted her email.
Okay, and you included her email into the article.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let me read this tweet, and then the email you can maybe go over while you're reading it. Do you want to do it like that, or do you want me to read it?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Do you want to, when you go through your article or some of the contentions you made in your article, do you want to also cover her email, or do you want me to cover?
Of course, because that's in my original article. So
Yeah,
of
cool.
course I'll do
Yeah,
that.
cool. Okay, so that's fine. So let me just read her tweet so people are aware. He goes, she wrote, "Hi, Michael. I find it unfortunate that you would paywall my response and make it appear as though I had not already corrected my errors a week or plus before receiving your email. I should also add that the errors I made are more minor than you imply, as the 2015 date was from Fox News article that has gotten the date wrong. I didn't just make it up. Furthermore, Epstein technically did inform to the FBI, but I corrected that it was not clear if he had continued to do so in the 2014-2015 window. I tend to think that someone correcting their errors is respectable, but you have made it clear my corrections were insufficient for you. Anyway, good luck with your serious claim, and every Epstein accuser and researcher is fabulous. For maximum fairness, what you claim to be offering me by asking for comment, here is my response to you, free of charge, below." And then she wrote, "Here's the link from the Fox News article with the incorrect date that I had used." And then you wrote, "The article doesn't say Rodriguez died in prison. You made that up." And you also said, okay, you wrote a long response, which, do you want me to read that, or do you want to go through the article first?
You
I'll
can
read
read
your
it if you want. Yeah.
I read it. So you wrote a response. You wrote, "I quoted from your reply at the very top of the article and then directed readers to where they could view your reply in full. I'm not going to apologize for soliciting voluntary payment in exchange for the significant amount of work it took to produce the article. I've used the same formula for previous articles, but if you want to post the full reply next, that's fine with me. Nothing's been withheld. I have posted everything for maximum transparency. You also haven't meaningfully corrected your errors. I specifically asked if you notified Brianna Joy Gray about your Alfredo Rodriguez error, as it became the premise of an extended exchange in which you darkly intimated that Rodriguez's death in prison was somehow connected to Trump declaring his first candidacy for president several months later, with sinister inference being that Trump was somehow responsible for Rodriguez's death. I do not think that darkly intimating that the president might have orchestrated a murder to cover up his alleged child sex trafficking crimes is a minor issue. It says quite a bit that you wouldn't have done the basic verification necessary to check whether your underlying fact claims were even correct before promulgating these crazy insinuations to a mass audience. The fact that you now claim, quote, Epstein technically did inform to the FBI is additional proof that you have not meaningfully corrected your errors. All available evidence indicates that Epstein simply complied with the terms of his own federal non-prosecution agreement, which entailed supplying information via his attorneys about certain agreed victim notification, procedures, payment of legal fees, and on request, the conditions of his incarceration by the Palm Beach Sheriff's Office. Who was he informing on himself? This isn't what an FBI informant is. Bradley Edwards, the victim's lawyer, was an actual FBI informant, confidentially supplying information on the criminal activity of Alfredo Rodriguez. The fact that you still refuse to meaningfully correct this error is all the more confirmation that my article was well worth writing. As a result of the correction, as a result of the correction, you did not tell me you you did not tell me you submitted to
You
Brianna
did tell
on
me.
sorry, as a result of this correction, you did tell me you submitted to Brianna on this particular error. It still says in the description box of her video that Epstein was an FBI informant. I asked you to clarify this in the follow-up email, and you claimed you were too busy to respond. So yeah, a lot of stuff you said was in fact made up. So that's the backdrop of it. But obviously, you are gonna go through the article. Let's pin it in the nest. Let me get pinned that in the nest for the audience. But do you want to explain your thought process behind writing the article, and then we'll get into it while I'm getting that tweet.
Yeah, I mean, the thought process is pretty self-explanatory, or should be very evident to you, Suleiman, because I'm constantly, for the past month, I've been constantly commanded that I have to go read Whitney Webb's book or listen to her podcast or engage with her work, because if I do so, then I will learn the ultimate truth about Epstein. I'll realize how egregiously wrong I've been about everything to do with Epstein. And even though people seem to have this chronic inability to actually synthesize what it is they believe to be Webb's core argument or some of her key evidence that would contradict anything that I've said, I nonetheless concluded that I'll comply with these constant demands from commenters and people on X Spaces and people who email me, people who post on various channels telling me to do this. I figure, okay, I'll go ahead and do it. So I started to read her incredibly dense, lengthy, and I'm sorry to say, extremely poorly edited and organized book called One Nation Under Blackmail. It's presented as a 2-volume book. It's well over 1,000 pages. And as I told her, I haven't read the book in its entirety, but I've read enough now to have a pretty firm grasp of it and the arguments and the thesis. People might not really understand this if they haven't actually attempted to read it, but very little of it actually has to do with Epstein, or comparatively little. Like the first volume is just a lengthy kind of winding, I don't even know what to call it exactly, discussion of all kinds of other ancillary issues. And then also people had told me to listen to her podcast appearances. I guess that's what people are maybe most exposed to her by. I can't imagine that very many people have actually read her book in its entirety. If anybody can claim to, I'd be willing to accept that at least some portion of people have, but I don't know. I'm a little bit dubious. So I go ahead and I listen to one of her podcasts. It's with appearances. It's with Brianna Joy Gray, who I like, who I've
So
known
just
somewhat.
just just before you get into that, so you've read small excerpts
I've
of
read portions of it. I've read chapters. I've looked through the citations.
both
I've
books
read
or
the
just the
intro.
first one?
What's that?
Both books or just the first one?
I'm sort of talking about it as one book. So both volumes I sort of am describing as one book.
Okay, cool. No problem.
So I've read significant parts, but no, I'm not going to claim that I've read all 1,300 pages or whatever it is yet. Um, and so I watch this podcast that she did with Brianna Joy Gray, and I figure, okay, if I'm going to watch anything to do with Whitney Webb, Brianna Joy Gray would be a good person to watch her in discussion with, because I know Brianna Joy Gray is logical, reasonable for the most part, intelligent. And then it turned out that there was a problem, because Whitney Webb is commonly assumed to be a journalistic authority, or she has this authoritative knowledge on all things related to Epstein, and therefore she's not challenged on her just basic factual assertions, because the people with whom she's engaging much of the time, including Brianna, even though I think Brianna is basically responsible, she still does not have sufficient background knowledge to identify when Whitney Webb says something that is false. And it didn't take long for me to note that she said some false stuff, some provably, demonstrably, indisputably false stuff. And on this podcast, and when I emailed her about it, asking her to comment, Whitney Webb admitted that she made the false statement. So it's not as though I'm trying to hide her rebuttal or whatever. No, she admitted that she made these false statements, and then she tried to act like she had taken corrective action. But she hadn't taken sufficient corrective action, and I'll get to that in a moment. Okay, so her first glaring false claim that I noticed was she said that, and you got to bear with me for a second because there's a lot of arcane information having to do with Epstein that most people won't be familiar with, but it's necessary to explain a little bit so people understand the context. So Webb brings up this idea, or this notion that the former household attendant, or household manager for Epstein in Palm Beach, meaning the guy who like ran the maintenance at the house and did sort of some menial tasks in the upkeep of the house, and who had worked for Epstein from August of 2004 to February of 2005. That guy, Webb said, died in prison under circumstances that Webb intimated were very darkly suspicious and had never been illuminated to the public. And Webb tried to claim, or tried to suggest, and this is how she kind of operates. She'll suggestively posit these like dark inferences that she wants people to make. And so she said she tried to connect this household attendant, his name is Alfredo Rodriguez's death in prison, to the fact that Trump, the quote, same year, she said, declared his first candidacy for president, with the idea being, or with the presumed inference being, that Trump was somehow involved with orchestrating the death of Alfredo Rodriguez in prison, or that it's, plausible that Trump orchestrated somehow this death in prison because Trump was seeking to cover up his complicity in child sex trafficking crimes. And Trump does appear in Epstein's so-called Little Black Book, and his name is circled in the book, and it was circled by Alfredo Rodriguez, who was the one who acquired a copy of the so-called Little Black Book and then attempted to sell it to a lawyer for one of the alleged victims' attorneys, whom Rodriguez had sat in a deposition with. And after the deposition, he called up this lawyer, his name is Bradley Edwards, and told him about the existence of this black book, which he had previously not disclosed despite a subpoena. And he tried to convince Edwards to purchase it from Rodriguez for $50,000. And Rodriguez was sort of desperate at the time. He was jobless. And so what happened was Edwards eventually notified the FBI and himself became a confidential FBI informant, ironically enough. This is the lawyer who then, would go on to represent Virginia Giuffre, the proven fabulist who spawned all the grandiose child sex trafficking crimes and represented all manner of other Epstein accusers and quote unquote victims. He actually was a confidential FBI informant. Epstein, by all available evidence, was not, but I'll get to that in a moment. And so Webb says that, this guy who had the goods on Trump and knew to circle him in this black book because he had some information and belief that Trump could have been a co-conspirator to Epstein in child sex trafficking crimes, he ends up dead in prison. And then we're supposed to assume or infer or surmise, according to Webb, that this is somehow connected to Trump declaring his first presidential campaign within the same year. And so you would think that if Webb wants people to join her in making that incredibly scandalous, sinister inference, that she would have checked some of her basic fact claims, right? Like she would have checked out, or she would know. And she stated as fact that Alfredo Rodriguez died in prison. Hence why Trump could have potentially been in some devious position to orchestrate his murder. But Alfredo Rodriguez did not die in prison. He just didn't. And it's verifiable through looking up his Bureau of Prison
Where did
registration
he
number.
die? Where did he die?
He died after he completed after he was released from the Bureau of Prisons custody. So I don't know the exact location of his death, but he was no longer in prison.
How did he die?
He, according to his wife, he died of cancer at age 60.
Okay.
And so Webb just didn't do the most basic factual verification. And yet, when she goes on these podcasts, she's assumed to be this like ultimate authority, in particular among internet audiences or podcast audiences on all things Epstein. So nobody would have the slightest notion that maybe she's saying stuff that's just factually false. But I did have that notion because I happen to know a lot about the case. And so I went through and comprehensively documented that this was false and included that in the note that I sent to her to address. And she says that she claims that she's made a correction on this. Well, she added a correction to some article that she wrote on her Unlimited Hangout website, which is not even what I was using which is not even what I had consulted. I didn't even know she had written it. I hadn't looked at it. There's a correction that she did append, and I see now that she actually has added to the correction in the wake of my publication of the article. So, okay, so that's funny. I'm just seeing this now in real time. She did point out this article to me as of yesterday morning and claimed that she had done the adequate correction because she clarified that Alfredo Rodriguez, I mean, she basically somewhat corrected her claim that Alfredo Rodriguez had died in prison, which she admitted was false. But as I pointed out to her, the article still says he died in 2015. That's not true. And now she's saying that there was a Fox News article that misled her. But the Fox News article that she now quotes or links to in this correction, and it also had tweeted at me, doesn't say he died in prison. So she did make that up, or she's so unscrupulous. She's so recklessly lax with her basic factual corroboration process that she effectively did make it up. And it led to this whole sort of interchange with her and Brianna Joy Gray on this podcast where they spend, a good deal of time talking about this theory that Trump is somehow responsible for orchestrating a murder of someone to insulate himself from child sex crime accusations. And she calls this a minor error. I don't know. I don't think it's a minor error to go before a mass audience and intimate that the president could be culpable of orchestrating a prison murder in order to get rid of somebody who might be able to implicate him in a child sex trafficking conspiracy. So that's one thing. And if her correction were adequate, why did she just like literally now add to the supposed correction on her website? But anyway, it's not corrected on the podcast. I mean, anybody who goes and watches this, the podcast has I think 120,000 views or something right now on YouTube. Anybody who goes and watches this has no notion that she's just spewing falsehoods. So shouldn't there be some correction? I mean, Brianna hasn't replied to me yet either, which I find odd because she's usually much more responsible. And I hope maybe she's just away or busy or whatever, and she will respond eventually. But Whitney, I asked Whitney in a follow-up email. So did you notify Brianna or her producer that there was this particular error about Alfredo Rodriguez? And she just didn't respond. Whitney said she was too busy to answer my follow-up email. Okay, so that's egregious falsehood number one. Then we have the thing about the FBI informant claim. So Whitney Webb, in the same podcast appearance, says that around this period of time when Alfredo Rodriguez died in prison, it's important for us all to understand, she says, that Jeffrey Epstein was also an FBI informant. So I thought to myself, okay, so there's no credible evidence anywhere that anybody's ever furnished that Jeffrey Epstein was an FBI informant at any time. But let's just narrow it down to this period that Whitney Webb is saying it's important for us to understand that Epstein was an FBI informant in. And so, what period of time? Alfredo Rodriguez died in late 2014. It was in 2009 that Alfredo Rodriguez was arrested by the FBI in the sting operation that was orchestrated by Bradley Edwards. So, what period of time are we talking about? I said, okay, let's just stipulate that the period of time here that for us to evaluate is like roughly the year 2000 to 2010. Is there any evidence in that time period that Jeffrey Epstein was an FBI informant? And so I go through the available evidence showing that there's no credible evidence that he was ever an FBI informant during that period. And there's also a significant amount of evidence to the contrary. Now, is it possible? And I say this in the article, is it
Just,
theoretically possible that Epstein was nonetheless an FBI
just,
informant at some
just
point?
Mike.
Sure, but there's no credible evidence to that effect. And
So
for
Michael,
Whitney Webb to just authoritatively state that as though it's a settled factual matter is just totally false, but she uses it to bolster this whole
so I've got
sinister theory
Michael.
she's trying to weave.
Michael, I've got a few questions for you, but obviously I wanted you to finish. But this specific one, in terms of Epstein being an FBI informant, there was a document that was released about a few months ago, I believe. Well, a document I saw a few months ago. Was it a month ago? And in there it said it was from the 18th of September
Yeah, I
2008.
know what you're talking about. So
Okay,
the so the Radar Online, which is not a tabloid, posted an I don't know about a few months ago, but this week, a few days ago, they posted
yeah, I saw
an
this on
article.
July the 9th, so a month ago. Sorry, go ahead
Okay,
anyway.
whatever it is, that document is not a new document. That's been posted literally on the FBI's website since May of 2018 as a result of FOIA litigation that Radar Online did initiate in 2017. So that's not like some new bombshell document that
No,
was
but
just
it's
uncovered.
no,
And
no. But
and
why I'm referring,
it's also incredibly mischaracterized. And it wasn't even what Whitney Webb was referring to. She was referring to something else. I just discussed it in the article as like one possible piece of alleged evidence that people might want to use as proving that Epstein was somehow an FBI informant. You have to be so egregiously ill-informed to think that that shows that Epstein is an FBI informant. I'll
well,
explain why. The
well,
so
let me
that
just one second before you explain. Let me explain to the audience what it is, and then you can explain your kind of
It's in the
rebuttal to it.
article, and I posted a screenshot.
Yeah, yeah, but I'm just going to read the actual from the
Okay,
source,
sure.
and then just so that people get. So this is specifically from the 18th of September 2008, which is within your time frame of 2000 to 2010, and it says on the 11th of September 2008, case agent advised writer that Epstein is currently being prosecuted by the state of Florida and is complying with all conditions of his plea with the state of Florida. Epstein has also provided information to the FBI as agreed. Case agent advised that no federal prosecution will occur. Now, what people have occurred on this matter, as long as Epstein continues to uphold his agreement with the state of Florida. Case agent also advised that no further forfeiture assistance will be required for this case. Case agent is requested to contact writer in the event this matter moves forward on a federal level. In that no further forfeiture related action is deemed necessary in this matter, is requested that subfile FF be closed. So people are indicating to the point that says Epstein has also provided information that FBI has agreed upon. So go ahead with your rebuttal to that, Michael.
Okay, so Epstein pleaded guilty pursuant to the terms of his federal non-prosecution agreement to state-level charges in Florida on June 30th, 2008. So the the FBI memo that you're reading from in September of 2008 is already several months into his term of incarceration. And it's essentially a certification by this FBI, this division of the FBI in charge of civil forfeiture matters, that no further civil forfeiture action would need to be should be pursued against Epstein because they certify he's complying with the terms of his non-prosecution agreement. And among the terms in the non-prosecution agreement were that Epstein would agree to a mechanism whereby a certain number of government designated victims could file for monetary damages against Epstein, and Epstein would agree ahead of time not to contest those claims. And he would also pay for the attorney that those victims could use to obtain their monetary damages, right? So that was a term of the non-prosecution agreement, and so you could find emails and so forth of Epstein's attorneys in communication with federal officials pursuant to that arrangement being carried out. And there were also instances where Epstein's attorneys were queried. I guess I should have included this in the article. I mentioned it in my reply to Webb, but there are also some circumstances. There are also some instances where uh, federal authorities would be checking in with to uh, to monitor or to receive an update of some sort on Epstein, the nature of Epstein's incarceration, because the incarceration that he pleaded, that resulted from him pleading guilty in Florida, was overseen by the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. And so there was some there was sometimes, there were some occasions when the feds would seek some sort of update about how the conditions of his incarceration were going, or if they were consistent with the non-prosecution agreement. So if we're going to assert that Epstein was, in quote, an FBI informant because he was supplying information through his attorneys pursuant to his adherence to the non-prosecution agreement, that makes zero sense. Who was he informing on then? Himself? An FBI informant is somebody who confidentially supplies the FBI with information about criminal activity of another person, right? So to call Epstein an FBI informant for complying with the terms of his own non-prosecution agreement after he had already pleaded guilty makes zero sense. But people like Whitney Webb and others, obviously they want to promote this idea that there was something still deeply sinister and mysterious going on, having to do with Epstein supposedly like collaborating with the FBI, that maybe gave rise to him getting the non-prosecution agreement or covering up for his high-profile co-conspirators or something. I mean, there's something that's being darkly intimated about that just is not borne out by the evidence at all. And Whitney Webb admitted this was an error to me in the email, and showed me a note that she had sent to Brianna Joy Gray's producer. But the note that Whitney Webb sent to Brianna Joy Gray's producer was incredibly confused and muddled. Whitney Webb wasn't acknowledging that there's no legitimate evidence that shows that Epstein was an FBI informant. Rather, she just kind of tried to shift around maybe the time period. Or in other words, the only error that she was apparently willing to acknowledge was the period of time in which Epstein was purportedly an FBI informant, which she had claimed might have been in 2015 in conjunction with Peter Thiel, but in fact could have been earlier. And that's just like not in any way a sufficient correction, because it still propagates the claim, which she stated as fact, that Epstein was an FBI informant. And if you look at the description box in Brianna Joy Gray's video with the podcast with Whitney Webb, it cites this like clarification that they say Whitney Webb submitted, but continues to assert that Epstein was an FBI informant, which just makes no sense at all. And so that's not a correction, despite her insistence, Whitney Webb's insistence, that she's made a correction, and she just doubled down on it to me now, but with her reply. And so, look, just one more time, is it inherently impossible that Epstein could have ever been an FBI informant? No, that's not inherently impossible. But you know what? You would need evidence for that to make a conclusory fact claim that he was an FBI agent, FBI informant rather, which is what Whitney Webb did, totally groundlessly. And that's just indicative of her whole sort of methodology I found in examining her work. People want me to seriously engage with her work. I did so. And this is what I've discovered. And I've discovered other stuff as well, which is included in the article. So Whitney Webb in 2019 was asked what was her inspiration, what inspired her to even start writing about Epstein in the first place. She started writing about Epstein, covering Epstein in 2019, like a lot of people, after Epstein had been indicted and arrested by the feds, which abrogated essentially the non-prosecution agreement or nullified it. And what Whitney Webb says inspired her to start writing about Epstein was this now endlessly recycled triple hearsay quote that appeared in a grand total of one outlet in the Daily Beast in July of 2019. And it's by Vicky Ward, who has a host of credibility problems of her own. And it's Vicky Ward almost certainly sourcing this contention to Steve Bannon, who she says is a former White House senior official in this article. And Vicky Webb in 2019 says 2 years before, years before that, she had been told by a former senior White House official, almost certainly Steve Bannon, just spreading gossip as he always does, that Acosta, when he was meeting with Trump transition officials, Alex Acosta, the U.S. attorney for South Florida, who presided over the non-prosecution agreement, that Acosta told Trump transition officials that he had been told that Epstein, quote, belonged to intelligence, and therefore he must give Epstein a, quote, sweetheart deal in relation to the prostitution claims, allegations essentially that had been made against him in terms of what he was going to be compelled to plead guilty to. And that quote is just garbage. I mean, there's no reliable sourcing to it whatsoever. And on top of that, you would think if Whitney Webb is supposed to be hailed as this incredibly meticulous and dogged researcher, that's supposedly why she's this foremost expert and authority on all things Epstein, you would think that at some point in the last 5+ years or 5 years, and especially before she published her book, which is supposed to be this authoritative book on all things Epstein, One Nation Under Blackmail, was published in 2022. You would think at some point she might have just taken a passing glance at this report, lengthy report, 350 pages, produced by the Department of Justice Office of Professional Responsibility, which, among other things, includes an account of Acosta being asked for the first time directly and under oath, under penalty of perjury, unlike this hearsay, basically probably largely made up, if not entirely made up, quote that appeared in the Daily Beast that one time and was never corroborated elsewhere. If you want to know Acosta's response to the claim that he somehow gave Epstein a quote unquote sweetheart deal because he was threatened that Epstein, quote, belonged to intelligence, he does so under oath, under penalty of perjury in that report when the Department of Justice asked him, did he have any knowledge that Epstein, quote unquote, belonged to intelligence, and then that influenced the terms by which Epstein's non-prosecution agreement was negotiated? And Acosta replies very directly and unambiguously, quote, the answer is no. So even if you continue to think that Epstein was an intelligence asset at the time that the non-prosecution agreement was brokered, if you're going to purport to be this singular authority on all things Epstein, and you're going to be hailed as this meticulous researcher who has this endless appetite for finding and synthesizing all the available evidence, and you haven't even seen this report, you're not even aware of it, what does that tell you? Whitney Webb told me by email that she had never even seen this document. She had never even attempted to read it. She only learned of its existence for the first time by me via email this week. And she says in her book, in other podcast appearances, etc., that her whole impetus for even covering Epstein, starting to write about him in 2019 and then producing this book in 2022, stems from this phony quote, this phony triple hearsay quote from Vicky Ward in the Daily Beast in 2019. So why? And then on top of that, on the very first page of her book, everybody demands I read this book. Okay, I started to read it. On the very first page of the introduction, Whitney Webb flagrantly misrepresents the probative value of this quote. She presents it as though it's a direct declaratory on-the-record statement from Acosta when it's nothing of the sort. She just misrepresents it. So, like, what research did she do to assess the veracity or sourcing of this quote? Apparently, none. You know why? Because she, I guess, was too wedded to it as this um, catalyst for her to then do 1,300 page or whatever it is disquisition on all things Epstein and intelligence. So, what does that tell you? I mean, I find it fascinating. I find it just amazing that anybody could try to rationalize that. That's incredible. It's staggering. And so I put all this to Whitney Webb. Um, among other things, she that in her reply email, which people can go look on the web on my site, or they can look at the version that she posted on X just an hour or so ago. I don't care which one you do. But she also tries to tell me that she partially agrees with me that the sex trafficking claims having to do with Epstein are overcovered. And really, so they're overcovered now because it's not that difficult to find Whitney Webb asserting again with utmost supreme confidence, as though she's asserting something as fact, proven fact, that there was a massive, quote, child rape ring, a pedo ring, Epstein was a pedo intel asset running a child rape ring, and that the entirety of DC had been, quote, blackmailed by Epstein. And that, she says, basically determines how the United States is governed. So if that's true, right, as she asserted many times, that's now, in her opinion, being overcovered. Really? That just makes zero sense. And you know what? And I'll stop now. And I'm happy to continue explaining, but want to let other people jump in. You know what that shows me, and that what that should show any rational person, the whole sort of scaffolding that underlies her sort of ideology or worldview or methodological approach on this subject is just so obviously shaky that you can just flick it with your finger and it crumbles. And that's what this told me. And it's not, Whitney Webb isn't alone. Other journalistic hotshots who get touted everywhere as big time experts on all things Epstein also have huge credibility problems when you do the bare minimum critical inquiry into their work output. I'm talking about Julie K. Brown, who wrote that initial Miami Herald series in 2018 that kind of breathed new life into the Epstein saga and actually catalyzed the federal prosecutors to re-prosecute Epstein. I'm talking about Tara Palmieri, who's a journalistic collaborator of the proven fabulous Virginia Giuffre, who's, again, the accuser who spawned all these grandiose child sex trafficking theories. Nick Bryant, who's also popular on alt media podcasts lately, actually shares a lunatic book publisher with Whitney Webb, and the book publisher said, like, one of its long-term missions is to convince the media to cover, quote, pedophilia scandals more, and they had faced trouble doing so until Whitney Webb came along, and now they've had big success in convincing the rest of the media to cover all these alleged pedophilia scandals. But Nick Bryant, who's somebody who Webb touts and also tries to claim as some kind of authority on thing, just a total fraud. Like, it takes a lot for me to be confident enough to call someone a fraud. Like, I wouldn't call Julie Brown an outright fraud. I wouldn't call Tara Palmieri an outright fraud. I don't think they are. I just think they have serious, serious credibility problems based on my good faith assessment of their work product. But Nick Bryant is just a genuine fraud. He goes on shows, for instance, and cites a fake study as having found fake findings. And when I simply sent him an email asking, "Hey, can you send me a link of the study you were citing that made this fantastical finding that you said on Breaking Points?" He also said on Chris Hedges. I'm sure he said it elsewhere. He's basically, what Nick Bryant says is that the Department of Health and Human Services has found in a study that up to like 350,000 children and women are being illicitly sexually trafficked in the United States every year. So therefore, there are millions and millions and millions of cumulative child sex trafficking victims everywhere. Everywhere you look. And he just he clearly never even read the study that he's supposedly citing, because it makes no such claim at all. You people can look up my article on Nick Bryant if they want the full details, but basically this is a study that was from 2001 that this kind of like bizarre methodologically bizarre like statistical extrapolation about the number of total children it posited could be potentially at risk for child commercial child exploitation. So uh, Nick Bryant in 2025 is using that already outdated study to claim that today, in present day, there are 350,000 women and children being sex trafficked everywhere per year in the United States, which is even again not what that 2001 study tried to say. And this is like one of the colleagues of Whitney Webb. They share a publisher. They're supposedly on the vanguard of like telling us the truth about Epstein, and that's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the total falsehoods of Nick Bryant. I don't think Whitney Webb is a fraud either. That's not. I wouldn't use that kind of language necessarily with her. But Nick Bryant is a true fraud. He aligns with he has this fake NGO called or this fraudulent NGO called Epstein Justice that he solicits donations for. For what purpose? Who knows? I think and he's in professional and financial alignment with like these crazed Christian evangelical anti trafficking groups. And I don't want to open a whole can of worms with that guy, but I say all that just to underscore that it's not Whitney Webb alone who, upon any sustained examination, shows herself to have huge problems, despite her perceived authority around the Epstein issue. There's now a slew of them that I've pretty systematically evaluated, and people can go to mtracy.net. Sorry for the plug if they want further information, but I try to document everything as comprehensively as I can with firsthand primary source material. And so I'll stop there.
Yeah.
I actually have to duck out for 1 second to go get the dinner that I ordered, but I'll be back in like 2 minutes.
No problem. Just while you do, and then I've got a question for you, so I'll just give you 2 minutes to come back. But guys, and I brought Sharif and Jay up to push back. I know I believe Jay's read all of Whitney Webb's books, both of the books, both volumes. And Sharif, I know, was being a bit got a bit emotional about it, so I wanted to bring him up as well to get his perspective. But just let me be clear on this, guys. So I've always said I'm the only free speech platform. I'll give everybody an opportunity to speak. I'll give everybody a voice. I invited Whitney Webb. I've invited Ryan Dawson, although normally I invite Ryan a lot earlier. So it may be that he's not seen it this Saturday as well in South Korea Saturday morning, so he might be sleeping in or wherever. So just so people understand. But look, for example, people for almost 2 years now have been very upset with me that I've given a platform to people who believe that we've got a Jewish problem. And their argument is these guys are anti-Semitic, they're making the movement look bad, they are paid opposition, whatever it may be. And my position has always been that, look, there is nowhere in X, especially on a big platform, that anyone has free speech. And so even though I don't agree with that position that it's a Jewish issue, I'll give people an opportunity to relay their ideas and thoughts, irrespective of what my opinion is. And so we've strove to be the only free speech platform on X, irrespective of what someone's opinion is. Not that we will give someone complete carte blanche to what they say, what they want to say. We'll always bring people in to try and push back if someone's making certain arguments. And so I just find it interesting that the very same people who've been platformed based on this idea of free speech, who I've platformed, who I've given a voice to, are the very same people who are now saying, why are you giving this guy a voice? Censor him. Don't let him speak. And I'm like, listen, let him give his opinions. You guys, there'll be people who can debunk him. There can be people who disagree with him. There are people who can push back on him. And we'll be able to do so. Any idea is only a strong idea if you're willing to speak about it in an open, honest forum. You may not know this, but like for example, you all know someone called Nick Fuentes. Now he's become really popular. But into 2023, everyone was afraid to platform him. I was literally the only person on X who platformed him. And remember, X is the most biggest platform in terms of, I'm just muting for 1 second, Michael. I'll just give it a, it's the platform where the most powerful people are on, the richest people are on, the most influential people are on, and it's where ideas and thoughts really impact society. And so I had him on when nobody else was willing to do so. He'd been on Fresh and Fit, of course, but it wasn't X,
Wait,
right?
are
It
you
was,
talking about Fuentes? Sorry.
yeah, yeah. And so I platformed him quite a few times. I brought him on X. I normalized him, and I do think that I was instrumental in normalizing to the fact where it became almost not too bad to bring him on. In addition to that, when his return, I organized the biggest space on X and made sure Tates were in and various others to once again normalize him. Now, why am I telling that story? I don't care. I don't want no blue Peter badge from it. But I'm just trying to explain the what I do when it comes to free speech. Ryan Dawson was somebody who again had been banned for a very long time. His career got revived in my view by Sneeko. And then I once again was the person who brought him on X, let him do we did I did space on him on 9/11, and people tried to cancel me on it. And again, I basically took the hit because I wanted to platform him. Because I believe with both of them, so with Ryan, I agreed with his position on 9/11, and I agree with a number of Ryan's positions, and I disagree with a number of Ryan's positions. I agree with Nick Fuentes on Israel, and then I disagree with Nick Fuentes on a number of issues. There isn't anyone I disagree or agree with wholeheartedly. Michael, I disagree with him on Epstein, but I agree with him on some other positions, and I disagree with him on some other positions. So again, but I'm always gonna have a free speech platform. You don't understand the amount of headache I've got, especially over the last 6 months, to platform people who are considered anti-Semites or people, and I've been like, look, I'm just gonna, I
All right,
don't
I'm
care, I'm
back,
gonna,
just so you know.
yeah, yeah, no problem. I'm gonna platform. So there's many people who are complaining and saying, why am I platforming Michael? But I'm just giving you the reason for it. I'm just very consistent. And so
First of all, Suleiman, I don't need you to quote platform
Wait,
me. I have a
Michael, can we
platform I can use
Mm.
that's my own. I just, I have talked to you for a long time now on various spaces, and so when you invite me, I
yeah,
try to
yeah.
be like, come on.
I'm not saying you need me, Michael.
I
Although
know, I know, I know.
although
I'm just
although
saying
I
I
am
put
the
up no
biggest,
argument
yeah,
for
yeah.
many reasons.
Yeah, but like I am the biggest organic space on X, and so the main reason, like I'm just giving my reasoning for why I platform people, and I'm just explaining I'm very consistent in my position about free speech. I'm very consistent about those issues. I'm not one of those people who's like cries, which is nearly everybody, who complain about free speech only when they're the ones being impacted, but when they hear a voice that they disagree with, then they want to censor them. So don't hold that position. Everybody knows Noam Chomsky's famous statement, which I'm not gonna go waste your time on quote, where he says it's the ideas that you dislike which demonstrates whether you really believe in free speech. So look, just so people understand, that's my position, that's my thoughts, and that's why I do what I do, and I'll always continue to do what I do. Now, Michael, I do have a question for you, and then I do know Sharif and Jay want to jump in. Sharif obviously vehemently disagrees with you. He sent me like 3, 4 messages. He's been tweeting in under the space. Sharif gets very exuberant in these type of situations. And I brought Jay up. Jay, I believe, well, Jay is a mega fan of Whitney Webb, and he's read the 2 volumes of her book. So again, I think he'll give a very good perspective and position on that. So the one question I do have, and it's not really related to the specifics, it's more related to the letter that Whitney Webb had. She wrote this. Um, okay. The last time I made a miss like this. Okay, no, I can't. Oh, here it is. Um, in addition, I think it's clear from your tone, from the tone of your piece, that you are not seriously interested in engaging with my work, and are seeking to discredit it. Seeking to discredit it at large based on two. Okay, I think she's trying to say you're trying to discredit it largely based on 2 mistakes that I had already corrected prior to receiving your email. So her
She
position
hadn't already
is,
corrected them. I just tried to explain that, and
sorry, what was that?
she had not she had not meaningfully corrected either of the.
No, but when you say meaningful, no, one second, Simon. Meaningful being a different perspective, but was there an attempt by her to correct it?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, and that she sent me the indication of that, which I then posted in the article. She sent a message to Brianna Joy Gray's producer that appeared to be like a semi-partial correction about the FBI informant claim, in which she suggests that the fundamental error, if she made one, was just suggesting the wrong period of time in which Epstein was allegedly an FBI informant, but that doesn't make any sense because.
No, but listen, Michael, I think I just want to try and understand what you're saying, because you seem to be suggesting, or she seems to be she seems to be suggesting that any errors she made were made prior to even your email. From what I'm trying to understand from you, unless you can correct me, is that you sent the email, she corrected, and then it was prior to your article. I'm asking you, have I understood that correct, or if she has tried to?
Okay, let me try to explain it more clearly. I watched her on Brianna Joy Gray's show. There were no corrections that were at all apparent to me when I was watching the podcast. Okay. And so I documented these errors. She then replies to me and acknowledges that she did make two errors. I think even
One
called
second,
them
one second. When you
two mistakes.
document them, you email her then, right? Let's get the timeline right.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. And then she says she had already sent a notification to Brianna Joy Gray's producer, informing the producer about one of the two errors.
Had she
And
sent this before your email?
yes. So it was shortly after she recorded the podcast. So it was about like a week ago. But she didn't even she did not adequately correct even that error, because if you look at the supposed correction that's now appended to the description box of Brianna's video, which I hadn't seen. I didn't read the description in the video. I simply watched it. It relays that Whitney Webb submitted some kind of clarification, and it just kind of like revises the vague time period in which Epstein was supposedly an FBI informant, but there's no evidence that he was an FBI informant at all. And she was trying to claim that he was an FBI informant um, in relation to something to do with an entirely different time period. So anyway, it's not a true correction because she did not actually identify the incorrect claim and then seek to take some kind of remedial action.
Okay, but can we
to
stop
correct
going
the
in
error.
circles?
And then,
'Cause I feel like
number
Michael,
two, she did not even. So she did not. I asked. She did not even say that she mentioned the other error to Brianna Joy Gray's producer, because Brianna might have had to take the entire video down. The false statement that Webb made
but
about
Michael, brother,
Alfredo
you've been iterating the same
Rodriguez dying
point.
in prison then
Michael,
serves as the premise for an extended discussion that she and Brianna have about how that could relate or be connected to Donald Trump launching his first presidential campaign within the same time period. And then we're supposed to do this sinister inference that it means Trump somehow could have orchestrated the prison murder
Michael,
of this person.
Michael,
So no,
you have been
there was
iterating the
not
same point
adequate corrections
roundabout.
made at all.
Sharif, I brought you up, bro. You need to control yourself. Then you get upset when I drop you. I'm trying to have a conversation. I'm going to bring you in. I asked him a question. He's reiterating the same answer because I want to understand the discrepancy in some of the point he made as well as her statement. Now I understand his claim is, before you interrupted, I believe your claim is that because in her email there, or in her response.
Let me summarize it quickly. I'll try to be more clear.
No, let me just let me
Okay,
summarize, and then if there's so she records the video with Brianna Joy. She then sends an email in making one correction, which you have explained that isn't a sufficient enough for correction. But in her email response to you, she says there's two corrections. Your claim is that there was only one correction, but that correction wasn't meaningful enough.
Yes.
Correct?
She inadequately corrected one of the two mistakes that she admits to,
But not
and
both of
then
them.
she
But
failed to
not.
give any indication at all that she even sought to issue a corrective about the second one. Because if she did submit, or if she did notify Brianna, about the second one, meaning about the prison death of this former Epstein house manager, then there would have to have been something more extensive done to magnify that correction, because it served
I
as like the
understand.
false premise for an extended discussion that
I
she
get
and
it.
Brianna had about what inferences could be made about whether Trump was guilty of orchestrating a murder of someone.
Okay, cool. Okay, let me bring in Jay first.
Actually,
Jay,
I'd like to go first, Sully, because Jay's obviously more knowledgeable. I'm just gonna be shorter than he is, so if I can go first, then he
no,
can have.
I wanna go to Jay because he's more knowledgeable, right? Because I want to bring quality to the space. So just bro, you need to just like I don't get what's going on. Like you just keep interrupting. It's not I'd give you an opportunity. I was bring you up on these platforms, and then you just you don't have a habit of just controlling yourself. Like I'm gonna give you an opportunity to respond to him, but I want to go to Jay because I want quality. And then if you want to scream at him or whatever, then you can do. So Jay, I want to bring you in. Now one of the things in that letter that Michael Tracy brought up was the thing about Acosta. Maybe Ryan Dawson didn't talk about it. That's why she didn't know. Jokes, 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 jokes. I'm not saying that's the reason I know. But anyway, go ahead, Jay. Jump in with your response to defend your girl, bro. Defend her honor. Go ahead, G.
What's going on, Suli? Listen, everyone repost the space. As always, it's a great conversation. You don't get uncensored, qualitative debates about these kinds of topics anywhere else. So make sure you do share. But yeah, really quick. As far as first of all, as far as the FBI informant situation goes, I don't think Grok is particularly conspiratorial, right? However, if you ask Grok about the evidence about whether or not Whitney Webb is, I'm not Whitney Webb, about whether or not Epstein was the FBI informant before the plea deal, Grok actually comes out in support of Whitney Webb. And just to kind of summarize, what it says, the cable states, so the document obtained through the Freedom of Information Act request, specifically a 2008 internal FBI cable dated September 9th, 2008, provides evidence suggesting Jeffrey Epstein was acting as an informant for the FBI before his 2007 plea deal. Here's how the document supports this. The cable states that Epstein provided information to the FBI as agreed upon. The phrase "as agreed upon" implies a pre-existing arrangement or understanding between Epstein and the FBI. This suggests that Epstein was actively cooperating with the agency prior to the cable's date, which aligns with the timeline leading up to his 2007 plea deal in Florida. So, the cable further notes that no federal prosecution will occur in this matter as long as Epstein continues to uphold his agreement with the state of Florida. This directly ties Epstein's cooperation with the FBI to the lenient 2007 plea deal, in which he pleaded guilty to state charges of soliciting prostitution from a minor, avoiding more severe federal sex and avoiding more severe federal sex trafficking charges. So the mention of avoiding federal prosecution in connection with his information sharing suggests that his informant status was a factor in securing the plea deal, which finalized in 2007 before the cable was written. So, yeah, Grok is not particularly, pro conspiracy. Yet, even Grok can look at the evidence and say there is a strong case to be made that he was. So, but
Well, I
as
mean,
far
that's
as
just, and that's completely wrong in every conceivable way. So that's a lesson in what happens when you outsource your brain entirely to AI.
how is
And I
that
mean,
wrong?
do you want me to go over it all again? I just discussed it with Suleiman in pretty extensive detail. It might bore people who already heard it, but
No.
almost everything that you said there is just incorrect. So Brock is not right.
So the point is that it's verifiable that the Epstein that what do you call it? It says as agreed upon, right? In the document or no? Because yeah,
Yeah,
the
as agreed upon by the non-prosecution agreement, the federal non-prosecution agreement that went into effect 2 or 3 months prior to that, when Epstein pleaded guilty to state level charges in Florida, then thus the non prosecution agreement was finalized by his guilty plea. And pursuant to the non-prosecution agreement, as I explained earlier, Epstein had to collaborate with federal authorities on payment of monetary damages to individuals that the government had identified as victims. And that included paying for legal fees and other matters. And then also there were issues in which Epstein's, the conditions of his incarceration by the Palm Beach Sheriff's Office would be checked in on by the federal authorities as well, because that was the terms of his incarceration are also specified or detailed in the non-prosecution agreement. So an FBI informant, I mean, what an FBI informant is if you are if somebody confidentially supplies the FBI with information about the criminal activity of another person. Epstein was supplying information having to do with the, in furtherance of the, or to implement the terms of his own non-prosecution agreement. So no, he was not an FBI informant. That document doesn't suggest it at all. And then on top of it, Whitney Webb wasn't even citing that document for her claim that Epstein was an FBI informant. She was citing something else that's incredibly muddled and confused and does not line up with any timeline that she was trying to posit. So
I'm pretty sure
even if you want to claim that memo suggests that Epstein was an FBI informant, that's not even what Whitney Webb was citing as the basis for her false claim. It was something else.
Yeah, if you like, her book does have the citations in it, and I don't have it in front of me right now, but there is a lot of
she admitted that it's not in the book.
requests. But
look at her email.
But yeah, at
she
the end of the
that
day,
her book does not have the citation. She falsely stated on Brianna Joy Gray's show, when Brianna tried to press her, saying, okay, how do we know that Jeffrey Epstein was an FBI informant? She says to Brianna, oh, yeah, the sourcing is in my book. So I go and look through her book. Where's the source for this claim? It's not there. And then I mentioned this to Whitney Webb by email. She says, oh, yeah, I forgot what was in my own book. Turns out it's not there. It's some other random thing that also doesn't make sense. So no, it's not even in her book by her own admission.
Yeah. So again, I don't have it in front of me, so I can't name every single source she cited in it. But the point
is, wrong when she says that it's not in her book.
Yeah,
she's wrong now about her own book.
I would assume she is correct about that. However, the point is the specific phrase "as agreed upon" does actually give the impression that there was
if you don't know what you're talking about, it gives that impression. As agreed upon by the non-prosecution agreement.
That's what was agreed upon. It explicitly.
Did you break up, Jay?
Out?
Yeah, I think you broke up. Sharif, jump in while Jay gets his mic sorted out.
Sure. So, listen, I'm just going to try to explain what I think a lot of listeners have been thinking as you've been ranting, Michael, Tracy. Okay,
I've been ranting. I was invited to come on and speak about the article. So what do you mean ranting?
But no, that's fine. Like, I respect Suleiman for bringing you up, and I respect his ability to allow every different points of view to come up and speak. But in my opinion, you've been ranting. You've been basically doing a merry-go-round, explaining the same point over and over. And I'm just going to explain things on how I think most people listening, what they're thinking right now. I'm pretty sure I remember you before this whole extravaganza happened, and this psyop, and this like their attempt to manufacture the Mandela effect.
Sorry, what psyop?
Let me finish, please. When their attempt to manufacture the Mandela. Let me finish, Michael. Why are you getting so upset? Just take it easy. Let me finish. There's been this whole attempt on Western media to manufacture the Mandela effect when it comes to Epstein files. And you're not the only pundit who has completely changed his tune. There's so many other pundits within your hemisphere, the same level of influence you have. They're not hyper influential, but people like you with a few 100,000 followers. Another good example is the comedian Tom Dillon, who also all of a sudden completely switched his tune. And I think it's just kind of incredible that you and all of these influential figures who used to be just begging for the release of Epstein files, talking about how important it was. And let me finish.
You're just making stuff up. You're like Whitney Webb, or you're probably worse, actually.
Okay, so I'm Whitney Webb too. Great. I'm actually Whitney Webb's husband. So let me finish, please.
Well, no, not if you're just going to make stuff up and ascribe stuff to me that's just totally fictitious. I'm not just going to let you keep speaking uninterrupted. When was I begging for the Epstein files? I haven't changed my tune. Suleiman and I discussed this a while ago, where it was essentially confirmed that everything I've been saying since early July is roughly consistent with what I have been saying for years prior to that. So no, I don't know. I don't know who Tom Dillon is. If you're talking about Tim Dillon, I haven't been following what he's been saying lately, but I haven't changed my tune at all. So you're just wrong.
Okay, maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't think I am, but I'm gonna finish my point anyways.
Have you looked into it at all? Have you gathered any information that would serve as the basis for you making that allegation, or are you just
Yes,
pulling stuff out of your ass?
Yes, I have.
Where did I beg for the release of the Epstein files? Show me. Where did you see me do that?
I mean, I can't go through all your.
So you never saw me do it. You just made it up.
No, I do remember.
Did you ever see me beg for the Epstein files? Yes or no?
You didn't beg for them, but you were advocating for the release of the Epstein files.
Where? When?
Just like 2 years ago.
When? Show a citation.
I mean, I can't find the exact tweets or the exact space.
Yeah, because you made it up. That's why you can't find it. You're a bullshitter.
Okay, but why are you getting so upset if it's not true?
Well, because I think it's worthwhile to get upset when people just make stuff up and falsely ascribe things to you. Wouldn't you get upset if I did that about you?
But I haven't said any lies, though.
Yeah, you just lied. You just made up the idea that I've been begging for the release of the Epstein files, and I totally changed my tune. You're just wrong. You admitted that you had no basis for saying any of that.
You have been trying to undermine.
You're just a bullshitter.
Let me finish. You've been trying to undermine how deleterious Epstein and that pedo ring have been to minors for a very long time, and you're trying to sort of trivialize it. And you talk about how there was most of the cases are women who are over the age of 18, which is freaking ridiculous, because anybody who's been following this for the past 4 or 5 years has been instructed by the same media that's now saying the exact opposite, that this is a pedo ring and that the Epstein files need to be released. And there was a whole controversy around Epstein killing himself in his own jail cell, which a lot of people, myself included, don't think it was actually a suicide. And it's just very weird that a lot of these mid-level influential pundits like yourself and Tom Dillon and all these other comedians and political pundits are now somehow advocating against Whitney Webb. You're advocating against Whitney Webb, who wrote 2 books about this specific issue. And you think
which falls apart upon basic scrutiny.
You are capable enough to respond to someone who has literally devoted years of their life to investigate this issue. And again, I'm just going to get back to the point I wanted to make, that a lot of people are astounded by this complete change in tune in the rhetoric.
Who has changed the tune? Show some evidence that I changed my tune instead of just saying that over and over again.
But stop making this about yourself. Okay, sure, I'm wrong about you.
Who are you talking to right now? You're addressing me. You're making allegations against me. You keep suggesting I changed my tune.
You did.
Substantiate what you keep repeatedly claiming about me.
Because I've been following you for a while.
So how did I change my tune? Specify.
I remember
articulate,
that.
Use your words.
You don't have to use ad hominem. Okay. I remember you.
Do you know what an ad hominem is?
The way you're talking, you're not letting me finish. The reason you're so upset, there must be a reason why you're so upset. Why are you so upset? And why don't you let me finish a point without you interrupting me?
Because you keep making false claims about me. I'm happy to engage in a reasoned debate about any aspect of any of my positions, including Epstein. But if you repeatedly keep ascribing false statements to me, then I have to interrupt.
I mean, if I wanted to, I could. If I wanted to, I could go deep enough into your post history
and
find posts and find you in spaces saying something very different than what you're.
Go ahead, go do it, please.
I mean, yeah, but
what's stopping you?
I could do it, but it's going to take hours of work to do, right? But there will eventually come to light. And I've always been wrong. I've always been right about people with dubious intentions, with many different.
What are you trying to say? My dubious intentions are exactly.
I and a lot of, not just myself, a lot of people think you are compromised.
By who?
I don't know exactly. It could be the CIA, could be any intelligence issue like Mossad. and there's a very good incentive for that to happen
Okay,
because
well,
what
now-
you're doing is,
now
again, let
we're
me finish.
getting
Now,
double
now I'm going on to the general point. Let me finish.
No, I
What you're
mean,
doing, let me
let's
finish.
not waste our
What you're
time
doing,
with people who want to
Michael
say that I'm
Tracy,
CIA or
Habibi,
Mossad. Like,
Habibi
is there
Boo Boo,
anybody else who has like something
Habibi
legitimate
Boo
to
Boo,
say or something
Habibi Boo
substantive to
Boo.
say?
Yeah, and by the way, Michael, since you're disagreeing with a lot of the people in the room, I appreciate your coming and look forward to what you have
Sure.
to hear.
Where's Whitney
I'm
Webb?
going to step.
Where's Whitney Webb being willing to subject herself to critical scrutiny? I'm serious. Has she ever?
She's playing Mario with her
She's
kids right
only
now.
ever done one space in the history of spaces.
Has she ever done a debate? I mean, I will debate. I mean, maybe I grant I'm a weird person, but I genuinely will, and Suleiman can verify this. Debate, critically engage with virtually anyone. I've done in-person debates. I've done online debates. I'll do whatever people want. People will have invited me on their. I've been grilled for hours on Epstein, whatever people want within reason for the past month. Why doesn't Whitney Webb do that? Why does she hide? What is this weird secretiveness? Like, doesn't anybody find that strange? Anyway,
She's
I want to hear
playing.
from
She's
Yeah,
Angelo.
playing Nintendo.
this is why, like, a lot of people, like, again, it's not about that issue, but like, this is why I give Ryan Dawson a lot of credit. Like, he is willing to come on these spaces regularly and debate his ideas and positions, whether it's on Epstein, whether it's on 9/11, whether it's on what's the other big one he does? There's a few anyway big ones he does. So like, he's willing to JFK, RFK, all those arguments. He's willing to come, have a conversation, have a debate, come on these spaces, get interrogated, argue with people.
Yeah, the problem is
And I
Ryan
do.
knows too much.
Uh, the thing is, well, this is the point. Ryan knows the topic really well, and when Michael and Ryan were on together, you saw,
Not,
like,
not when it comes to Building 7.
I mean, I disagree. I think Ryan does know quite a lot. And so when what you call it, and I do agree that I think when Whitney Webb puts herself around this kind of web of, not willing to converse, then I think there is question marks. Like, is Ryan's contentions true that, that she took the information off him or whatever it may be? I'm not sure, but I think there is this. I think she should be willing to have these conversations with people who disagree, or come on a space where people are able to ask her questions, or to basically jump on a space where people can ask, people can ask her questions irrespective of what it is, and have confidence in her opinions and ideas rather than what's happening. So I agree with that. But Andrew, sorry, you've not had a chance to jump in. I know you've been waiting a while, so
Oh,
go ahead,
I
jump in.
appreciate it, Solomon. I like the space. I like that Michael's doing it, and I have to agree with Michael first of all because I'm going to disagree with him later. The fact that Webb didn't know the Department of Justice report with Acosta, where he officially denied under oath, and this is the premise of why she picked up a pen to write all these words, but she didn't do any background to the degree that you did. How long have you? I just want to ask Michael, how long have you been looking into this the way you have?
Well, I mean, it's been much exceptionally more intensive than it's ever been since early July, but
Since
I've
you knew the Acosta thing.
intermittently looked into like new developments, let's say every couple months for quite a while.
Yeah, but
But it's been much more intensive now.
so when did you
I
find
hadn't
out?
read the full DOJ OPR report until last month. But then again, I didn't write a 1,300
Well,
page
this is
book
kind of my
that I
point, right?
claimed was going to be the definitive Epstein story in 2022, 2 years after that report came out.
This is kind of the point, and the fact that she said I'm not going to engage with Michael Tracy because he's not worth the time. I'm going to go play Super Nintendo with my kids. I am all
Is that what
for.
she said?
He did comment that. I was like, really? So like she's
I
got.
haven't even seen that. What did
She,
she say exactly?
it was a reply to someone about whether or not she'd go on a space with you. I think it was this actual exact question. It was somewhere. I don't want to go find it, but it was in that reply chain to you. I think somewhere, and she basically said
Well,
that he's
I
not
sent it
worth the
to her. Let me
time.
see. Is that chick smasher? Let me check.
I'm all for family time, don't get me wrong, but you have a premise that you have a view that there's an overarching pedophile network in the world, right? And you don't have the time to address some serious questions about the work you're doing, your life's work, basically. This
Andrew, did
is,
you see
and
what she
the
said in
problem is,
the?
it's not just Michael. If it was just you, I could kind of get,
I'm
I like you,
abrasive. I
Michael,
get it.
but
I'm
you're an
not that.
acquired taste,
Yeah.
okay? But it's the questions themselves. You need to remove, the painter from the painting a little, if you know what I'm saying. Anyway, sorry, continue.
Well, Andrew,
The
did you see
questions
in
are
her
valid.
reply email to me? And maybe I should have emphasized this more in the piece, or maybe I'll write a follow up piece that more emphasizes it. But toward the end of her first reply email to me, where she attempted to claim that she had taken corrective action for the errors that she admitted to. And I argued that she did not take adequate corrective action for the one error that she claimed that she submitted a correction for to Brianna Joy Gray. And then for the second one, she took no action at all, really. But toward the very end of that, she made what was a pretty astonishing claim that like I kind of just wanted to, it would have been a whole nother tangent for me to in that piece. But she said that she tried to like posit that she has some partial agreement with me, which is that she agrees that the sex trafficking angle to this whole Epstein thing can sometimes be overcovered. This is the same person.
Yeah,
This is the
well,
same person who has stated conclusively and as a statement of fact that there exists a pedo rape ring that has resulted in Epstein via Israel blackmailing the whole of DC. And now she's saying that the sex trafficking component is overcovered. Really? If what
yeah,
she
well, I think
stated as
she,
true is
yeah.
in fact true, then like there should be nothing else to cover.
Well, I think that she conflates that a bit with the a trope of anti-Semitism, and she's very sensitive to that claim. And from what I've heard of her, she describes this generally as organized crime and not necessarily, I mean, Israel is like one component of a criminal syndicate that runs America, essentially, right? And so, but the point being, if you think there is underage trafficking involved, you you would think that you would respond to allegations about like this is not a little thing like a mix up of a date or something.
Yeah. So Andrew,
And
I recall going back and forth with you. I want to say in 2023 about Virginia Gouffre and Dershowitz and this kind of stuff. So people accuse me of
uh-huh.
of changing my tune suddenly and becoming more of like an Epstein skeptic. But I think you can attest that you
No,
and I debated this several years ago, and you were defending Virginia Gouffre as somebody who's a credible and like not
I think what I was
impeachable and
doing was
a
I was saying
reliable
that
like source for the proliferation of these child sex trafficking theories. I don't know I don't know if you've read everything that I've done on this, but like to
yeah, I've
whatever
read a
extent
lot.
you've read it, like do you still think do you agree with yourself 2 years ago
Well, I
and like
think her credibility is definitely in question more than I thought before, but I think that the point I was making with you on the Dershowitz thing was the level of basically admission to was she making something up or did she may misremember it and the exact wording allowing for wiggle room and that kind of thing. But in terms of her overall credibility, I do think especially some of the stuff with the NGO type things that she set up that you pointed out especially raises eyebrows. Some of the connections with the people that like Eliza Blue, like that lady, I think is that her name? I don't want
yeah.
to get it
Yeah,
wrong.
she Eliza Blue
Okay,
was the director
but
of
yeah,
the previous iteration of Gouffre's scam NGO, where she's like one of these human trafficking hysterics, and it was basically just a front group to collect money for Virginia Gouffre. Nobody can point to a single instance in which a quote survivor was helped by this organization. It was just part of the whole extortion racket. And her lawyers set it up. The ones who represented her in all this litigation to obtain settlements, they funnel the money to this scam organization that does nothing except be a portal for Gouffre's like publicity stunts.
mhm.
And yeah, I mean that's the bottom line.
I think if you
And
removed
now
it
like
from
her
the context of pedophilia, people would see it a lot more clearly if it was for like clean water in Nigeria.
sure, yeah, because people when you when pedophilia is inserted into any discussion, people deactivate their critical faculties. You're no longer allowed to think rationally about things. You have to react viscerally and primally and animalistically.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
that's the reason why nobody, very few people other than me, will engage critically with this issue because like I'm like numb psychologically, and I just don't care that people
you should
will
put that in your
throw
bio.
that people will fling constant defamations at me because it just doesn't affect me. I know it's false. Like I know like
Yeah.
I'm not a pedophile. Like if
Are you
don't you
sure?
think if I was a secret pedophile or I wanted to like promote pedophilia, I wouldn't have exposed myself to this issue. Like, wouldn't I like
Uh,
try to like lay low?
this is your credential for your NAMBLA application.
Yeah, like,
Um,
and what does it tell you that one after another, all these supposed foremost journalistic authorities are either a fraud in the case of Nick Bryant, and wait till you see what's coming next. That video that he did with Chris Hedges, I don't know if you saw it, on like sexual blackmail.
No,
Or
I
whatever.
didn't watch it. I don't really
I
follow anything
wasn't
Nick
gonna watch it
Bryant
either,
does or
but like
says.
somebody actually asked me to watch it to like see if it was credible. It's actually shocking. It's like every other sentence. It's just a blatant either distortion or falsehood or distortion, the misrepresentation or outright falsehood. So I'm
Yeah.
doing something similar that I did with Webb, but even more strident.
Yeah.
I'm
Well, you
demanding
get the same reaction from everyone.
that
basically.
Chris Hedges remove that video. It's got 1.6 million views and rising. There's like just
What
one
if
after
instead he
another.
just had you on after? Would that be something you'd consider
It should be
doing?
removed regardless. He should issue a
Yeah.
correction. He should issue a correction and remove it. I mean, there's if he has a shred of journalistic integrity left, because there's no salvaging it. It's truly
I haven't
amazing.
seen it. I didn't know it was that bad.
It's
But
worse than I could have imagined.
yeah, I would
So
agree.
let's give you
and I
one
think Chris
example.
Hedges
Okay,
should have you on.
I do it. So just for example, Nick Bryant in this video, which I don't recommend people watch because you're just going to be misinformed like radically. Nick Bryant says that the Epstein Victims Compensation Fund was part of the cover-up because it was organized by David Boies, the lawyer, and David Boies effectively inserted a provision that required anybody who got a settlement from that fund, from Epstein's estate, to agree to an NDA, and that would forbid them from naming any other perpetrator. And that shows, according to Bryant, that there must be this whole wider universe of child sex predators who these victims who receive settlements have been silenced from naming. He just hallucinated this. It's amazing. It's totally false. You can look up the protocol that governed how this settlement fund was administered. There was no confidentiality requirement at all. There was not even a requirement to waive making civil claims against others. There was no imposition of non-disclosure whatsoever. He just made it up. It's amazing that this guy is on all this touted across the podcast circuit as this big Epstein expert. He's just a total fraud. He's like Virginia Giuffre, one of his dear friends. He said,
Didn't Breaking Points have him on?
yeah, and then I got them to issue like a partial correction the next day because he
I
made
think
up
they
a
need to do a
fake Department of Health and Human Services study. I mean, this guy is shameless. He's got a problem. I don't say Whitney Webb is a fraud. I don't think she's an out and out fraud. Okay, I think she has problems with the credibility of her methodology and her like sort of reckless disregard for her fidelity to the facts. But this guy Nick Bryant like actually is a legit fraud. It's amazing.
So you'd say she's
so
sloppy.
Michael, okay, so let me just bring the conversation back because this is just seems like a chat between
I
you
was going to
guys.
disagree with him.
You
I'm
could
sorry.
probably. It's all right. Just felt like a telephone chat, which you could probably do some of the time.